The injury report will come out this afternoon, but there's nothing of any real note to report of anyway at this point. Sort of expect all hands on deck that are available to practice in some form. So feel good about that. Jets coming into town, a really, really good football team. Had a tough matchup against the Niners on Monday night. Game kind of got away from them a little bit as the game wore on, but a team that I got a tremendous amount of respect for. Their defense over the last handful of years has been certainly one of the top 5 in almost every category. They got excellent talent in the secondary. They got a really good front. They got 2 really good linebackers. It's a formidable opponent on defense. Offensively, they got one of the best runners in football, I think, as far as talent catching the ball. They got a really good young receiver and obviously a Hall of Fame quarterback that is leading the show there. So really, really good coaching staff, guys that I know really well. A lot of people that I've come across in my career, guys that I got a lot of respect for. They'll be ready to roll on a short week, and they'll give us as good a test as anybody. So looking forward to it. Looking forward to the challenge. But we're going up against a very, very good defense and an offense with a Hall of Fame quarterback. So I know I felt like we needed to play. I mean, our starters played a handful in this preseason. I felt like that was necessary. I think it paid off for us early, in the game, and we came out and played well to start, which was good. Hard to say across the league if that's a unanimous thing you can make a statement about or not. I do think every year, though, the month of September is always revealing about what your football team is, and and it's usually not 1 or 2 games. It's usually 3 or 4 that first part of the season. You're finding out what your team is made of and what they're all about and what they do well and don't do well. And there's really no other way to find that out other than playing NFL football games. And even in the preseason, it's not real because you're not always going, starters on starters for multiple drives. So it's every year is a learning process. Even if you have a lot of returning players, it's still a learning process about what that year's team is going to look like and be like. And it's one that we pay a lot of attention to, particularly in the early part of the season, on how we use players, what they do well, and what our team's identity forms as. And you hope that it's the right way. The things Cincinnati, the things that helped us the most is that, one, we had a really good staff, and I think we have one here, where you are constantly in the first part of the season evaluating what it is that you do well. And then once you kind of find what that identity is of your team, you lean into it. And that is an ongoing process over the whole year, but usually in this first couple of weeks, you find out a lot of things. And I think that you rely on people's thoughts and ideas and viewpoints on their positions, on their units, offense, defense, and special teams. And you just have to be willing to be flexible and adaptable and not afraid to say what we thought we were going to be isn't true and we need to do something different. And that was what we did in Cincinnati, especially when we first got there. We were a under center wide zone team. The arrival of Joe Burrow changed that. We try to do a little bit of both. Turns out for whatever, and again, every year it changes. Your talent acquisition changes, and we ended up becoming a shotgun team and a gap scheme team, and as the year went along. And so anyway, long story short, there's an evolution that takes place in the first part of the season, and you have to be willing to know when to pivot and to adapt. I've said this before, and I do stick to it, that these adjustments usually are made kind of in between series, and I think that the teams that have the best chance to adjust fast. And I think that as we get working together as a staff, I think we'll adjust faster and do a better job. I need to do a better job than I did in the second half for sure. So there's a staying ahead of the turn essentially before adjusting before the other team does. And so that's kind of a constant process from the first series of the game through the last. And so the halftime thing, I think it's a little bit skewed. But certainly the numbers, whatever those are, bear it out that it's not been very good. So those are things that we have to look at too as a staff and as a offense and defense and special teams unit on where we can improve that. And if it becomes a theme for us this year, then we got to figure out how we can change it, whatever that is. All of it is the best answer. Yes. There's some of it was by design. Some of it was by the pressure that we faced. And I was trying to make sure that we could get the ball off. I was trying to maintain some aggressiveness in the pass game, even with a lead. And it wasn't as productive as I would have hoped it would have been. But yeah, there's all those things factor in when you're in the pass game. And the way the pressure came over the course of the game, I was just trying to be mindful about what position I was putting those guys up front in and putting Will in. So those are all a part of the process. It's not the sole reason, but yeah, all those things factor in. Likely to be closer to full. Still be mindful of what we're asking as he gets in shape and starts to feel better and better. But yeah, I see his role increasing. His role in practice should practice more. Role should increase. Should feel a lot better about where he's at this Sunday versus last. Yeah, it's a learning process for guys because that's heavy. Those things weigh heavy on you. It's a learning process for me too. It weighs heavy on me too. So, but those things you work through and you get ready. And then look, sun comes up the next day. You got another team you got to go play. You got to get ready to go. And so that usually fixes most of those problems. But I will say that there's guys that handle it well, and then there's guys where they struggle. And I'd say so far Will has handled it great. Even after the game, he was in a really, really good place, understood the mistakes, understood what he had to correct, and is ready to kind of move forward. And I think you got to be mentally tough in this league to play football, and then even tougher to be a quarterback in the league because it's always going to be on you. Whether you're deserving of it or not, it's always on you, whether you win or lose. And that's a pretty heavy crown to bear sometimes. But Will is about as tough as they come, and he's more than up to the challenge to be able to handle that type of thing. And that part to me was really encouraging when he came in on Monday and was open, honest, critical of his performance, and ready to get ready for the next game. Yeah, I mean, we're all sort of a product of our experiences, and I think that I've had some really good ones around some really good players. And so, yeah, it's really helpful to see because every quarterback, no matter how good they are, at some point loses a game, and it's just the way it goes. You play long enough, you get humbled enough times, you understand that's part of playing in the NFL and part of being a leader and part of being the face of a franchise. And so I've been a part of some guys that understand that and know how to react to it. And, I thought one of the best ones that Peyton was great. I got to see Joe learn how to do that. And then the one that I thought was really, really impressive was Matthew Stafford. I thought he understood that process as good as anybody and had some really tough years early in his career as well. So those guys learn, they figure it out, and they learn what leadership looks like. And again, I've said it before, but real leadership is most impressive when it's hard and not necessarily when things are going great. So, and I think Will is totally up to that task.